The city was silent under the broken streetlights. Cold wind moved through empty streets, carrying dust and paper scraps. Among the shadows, a man named Ethan walked slowly, his hands deep inside torn pockets. He was homeless, his clothes old, his shoes broken, his body shaking from hunger. Every night was the same, searching for warmth, searching for food, searching for a reason to live. That night felt colder than all others. The sky above was black, no stars, only smoke from the factories at the edge of the city. Ethan found his usual corner under a collapsed billboard. There he had hidden a small blanket, his only treasure, his shield against the cruel night. He sat down, pulling it over himself, trying to forget the pain in his stomach. But then he heard something strange. A weak sound, like a whisper mixed with a cough. At first he thought it was only the wind. Then he heard it again, closer, a voice that did not sound human. Ethan stood slowly, his heart racing, his eyes searching the darkness. In the shadow of a broken wall, he saw it. A figure lying on the ground, glowing faintly under the moonlight. It was not a man, not a woman, not any human he had ever seen. Its skin was pale blue, covered in wounds, its eyes half closed. It breathed with difficulty, each breath sounding like the end was near. Ethan froze, fear holding his feet to the ground. All his life he had heard stories about aliens, invaders, monsters. He had never believed them, and yet here one was, dying in front of him. He could run, he could ignore it, he could pretend he saw nothing. But his heart whispered something else. The alien trembled, whispering words in a strange language. Its hand lifted weakly, falling back again. It looked so fragile, so lost, so close to death. Ethan's chest filled with a strange feeling. He knew the cold well. He knew the pain of being unseen, unwanted, forgotten. And in that alien, he saw himself. Without thinking, he pulled his blanket from his shoulders. It was thin, dirty, patched many times, but it was all he had. He kneeled beside the alien and placed the blanket over its body. "Stay alive," Ethan whispered, not sure if the alien could understand. The alien's trembling slowed, its breathing grew softer, and for a brief second, its glowing eyes opened, staring into his. It mouthed a word, too weak to say it, but Ethan thought he understood. The word was protector. Ethan sat beside it through the night, holding the edges of the blanket tight. The city around him stayed silent, but he felt a weight in the air, like something was watching, like something was waiting. The cold bit into his bones, hunger gnawed at his stomach. But he did not leave. Every minute, he thought the alien might die, and every minute, he stayed. Hours passed, and Ethan began to see things. Strange visions came to him in half-sleep. Armies of shining soldiers walking under alien skies. Flags of colors he had never seen. Ships like mountains moving through stars. And in those visions, he saw himself, standing among them, not as a beggar, not as a forgotten man, but as someone important, someone needed. He shook his head, telling himself it was only hunger, only tiredness. Yet the feeling stayed. The alien's hand touched his arm lightly, its fingers glowing faintly. And again, the word came, soft, broken, but clear this time. Protector. Ethan looked at the dying alien under his only blanket. He felt fear, but also a strange kind of peace. As if destiny had placed him here, in this cold corner of a ruined city. The night was long, the shadows deep. But he knew one thing. Life would never be the same again. The night grew colder as the hours dragged on. Ethan sat with his back against the broken wall, his eyes half closed but his body alert. The alien lay wrapped in his thin blanket, its chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. Sometimes it coughed, sometimes it whispered words in a language Ethan could not understand. Each sound made Ethan's heart beat faster, because he did not know if it meant life or death. Around them, the ruined city slept. The few humans who lived in the shadows had seen Ethan kneeling beside the strange body. They whispered to each other, calling him mad, saying he was cursed, saying no one should touch an alien. But none of them came closer. They watched from alleys, their eyes glowing with fear and envy. Ethan ignored them, his focus fixed only on the fragile creature under his blanket. The alien's skin glimmered faintly whenever the moonlight touched it. Strange lines shone across its arms, glowing like marks of fire under the skin. Ethan leaned closer, trying to see them better, and realized they were not random. They looked like symbols, like signs, patterns too perfect to be natural. For a moment he thought of tattoos, but these marks pulsed gently, alive. He wondered if they were words, if they told a story of who this being was. The alien stirred suddenly, its eyes opening a little. The glow inside them was weak but sharp, like a fading star refusing to die. Its lips moved, struggling to form sounds. Ethan leaned down, whispering, "Easy, don't speak, save your strength." But the alien clutched his wrist with surprising force. Its voice cracked, broken by pain, yet a single word escaped in English. "Protector." The word echoed inside Ethan's mind like a bell. How could it know this word? How could it know him? His throat went dry. He wanted to ask questions, but he had no courage. The alien's hand trembled and fell again, its eyes shutting, leaving Ethan with silence. He sat there, shaking, his breath visible in the cold. That word repeated again and again in his mind. Protector, protector, protector. It was madness, he thought. He was no protector. He was nothing, a homeless man forgotten by the world. And yet, something deep inside told him that this moment was not small. This was a beginning, though he could not yet see what it meant. Hours passed, his body tired but his spirit restless. Ethan fought to stay awake, afraid that if he closed his eyes the alien would die. Sometimes he heard voices in the distance, shouts, heavy steps, strange sounds in the air. He could not tell if it was real or only his imagination. But once, the ground beneath him shook faintly, a low hum spreading through the earth like thunder, trapped far below. He pressed his hand against the cold stone and felt it vibrate. It was not natural, something powerful was moving. The alien's breathing grew weaker, its chest barely rising. Ethan panicked. He had nothing to give, no medicine, no food, not even another blanket. All he had was his own warmth, so he wrapped his arms around the creature, holding it close. It felt strange in his embrace, its skin cool yet soft, its body fragile. He whispered nonsense to it, words of comfort, words he wished someone had told him when he was alone. "Don't leave, stay alive, I don't know who you are, but you're not alone tonight." At times Ethan thought he was dreaming, because visions came to him again. In his mind, he saw endless halls filled with alien banners, armies bowing to a shining figure, and among them a human face, his face. He saw battles across burning skies, ships rising and falling like firebirds. He saw alien soldiers saluting him, calling him something he could not understand. Each vision left him trembling, his heart filled with fear and wonder. Why was he seeing these things? Why him? The alien groaned again, pulling him back to reality. Its eyes fluttered open, glowing faintly. And this time, more words came, broken but clear enough to cut into Ethan's heart. "You protector, must live." Then its hand fell limp, its breath shallow like a candle at its last flame. Ethan shook his head, refusing to let it end. He pulled the blanket tighter, pressing his forehead against the alien's. His teeth clenched, his voice low and angry. "You're not dying, not while I sit here, not while I breathe." The city remained silent, but the air around him felt heavier. Ethan lifted his eyes to the sky, and for the first time, he noticed something unusual. A faint line of light moving across the black clouds, too steady to be lightning, too silent to be human. His breath caught. He knew it was not natural. Something was coming, something beyond this world. He held the alien closer, his heart pounding in his chest. He did not know why, but he felt the world itself was about to change. And somehow, he was in the center of it. The night stretched on, the ground trembling softly again. And far away, deep in the horizon, a low rumble like thunder rolled closer. Ethan looked down at the dying alien, then up at the moving lights in the sky. His lips moved silently, repeating the same word that had been given to him. Protector. The night refused to end. The city lay under a blanket of silence, broken only by the sound of rats in the trash and the distant hum of machines that never slept. Ethan sat with the alien in his arms, his body numb from the cold, his stomach empty, his eyes heavy, but his mind refused to rest. Every time his lids fell, he forced them open, because he was afraid that if he looked away even for 1 second, the fragile creature under his blanket would slip away. The alien's breathing was weak, shallow gasps that barely moved its chest. Its glowing marks flickered, sometimes dimming so low that Ethan thought it was gone, then lighting faintly again like embers refusing to die. He pressed the blanket tighter, whispering again and again, "Hold on, stay alive, you can't leave yet." He had never begged for his own life, but now he found himself begging for the life of a stranger not even human. From time to time, Ethan felt the earth shiver, faint vibrations rising through the concrete. It was like giant engines turning in the deep, or something massive moving under the clouds. The sound was not loud, but it made his skin crawl. It made his heart beat faster. The people hiding in the alleys began to notice too, and they vanished deeper into the ruins, afraid of what was coming. The alien stirred once, its lips moving, its eyes opening to thin slits. Ethan leaned close, his ear near its mouth. The words came broken, half in a strange tongue, half in English. Safe, protector, danger. Then silence again, and Ethan's stomach twisted with fear. Danger, he thought. Danger for whom? For the alien, for himself, for the whole city. As the hours dragged, Ethan's mind drifted into visions again. He saw great halls of glass and steel, shining with colors he could not name. He saw alien soldiers kneeling in formation, their armor glowing like fire. And he saw himself standing in the center, not as a beggar, but as someone the armies followed. The vision broke with the sound of coughing, the alien struggling under his arms. Ethan shook himself, whispering, "Stay here, don't go anywhere, I'm not leaving you." He thought of leaving to search for water or scraps of food, but fear held him still. What if he left and returned to find the alien cold? What if the blanket alone was not enough? No, he decided, he would not move, even if it killed him. He would stay, because for once in his life, someone depended on him. The city outside stayed restless. Sounds carried on the wind, shouts, the distant bark of dogs, strange cracks like thunder, but too sharp to be natural. The ground trembled again, stronger this time, enough to shake dust from the broken billboard above. Ethan looked up, his heart racing, and through a gap in the clouds he saw it. A massive light sliding across the sky, steady, silent, not like any airplane he had ever seen. It glowed faintly blue, like the marks on the alien's skin, and it moved as if searching for something below. Ethan pulled the blanket closer around the alien, his voice low. "They're looking for you, aren't they?" The alien's eyes opened faintly, and for a second it almost seemed to nod. Ethan's throat tightened, fear and wonder mixing in his chest. If they were searching, then sooner or later they would find this place. And if they did, what would happen to him? A homeless man holding one of their own. The alien's hand moved again, weak, trembling, reaching for his wrist. Its glowing fingers pressed against his skin, leaving a faint warmth behind. This time the word came clearer, softer, but with meaning heavy enough to crush him. Protector. Ethan closed his eyes. The word burned into his mind like fire. He had nothing, no food, no home, no family. Yet here was a dying alien calling him protector. And for the first time in years, he felt like he mattered. Not because he was strong, not because he was powerful, but because he had chosen kindness when others turned away. The night stretched on, every second feeling like an hour. Ethan fought sleep with all his strength, pressing his forehead against the cold wall, whispering to himself to stay awake. The alien breathed shallowly, but it still breathed, and that was enough for him to hold on. He did not know why the sky trembled with lights. He did not know why the earth shook under his feet. But he knew one thing with certainty. Something was coming, something greater than this city, greater than him, greater than anything he had ever imagined. And in the middle of it, somehow, he was no longer invisible. No longer just a shadow in the corner of a forgotten street. He was a protector, at least for one night. The first light of dawn crept slowly over the ruined city. The broken buildings caught the pale glow, their sharp edges shining like the bones of giants. Ethan had not closed his eyes even once, his body weak from hunger and cold, but his arms still wrapped tightly around the alien under the blanket. The night had been endless, yet he had held on, whispering words of comfort into the silence. Now the alien breathed faintly, barely alive, but still alive, and that was enough. Then the ground trembled, stronger than before. Ethan's head lifted, his eyes scanning the empty street. The trembling did not stop. It grew deeper, spreading through the earth like thunder. Windows rattled in broken frames. Dust fell from crumbling walls. The air seemed to hum. It was no earthquake. It was something else, something vast moving in the sky above. Ethan dragged himself up, holding the alien close, and stepped into the open street. He tilted his head back, and his breath caught. The clouds split apart, and from behind them massive shapes appeared. Ships, larger than anything he had ever seen, silver and black, floating like entire cities in the air. They moved in silence, their glowing underbellies casting blue light across the ruins. People crawled out of alleys and broken doors, staring upward with wide eyes. Some screamed, some ran, others fell to their knees, praying. The whole city thought it was the end, thought this was an invasion. But Ethan stood frozen, his arms tight around the alien, because deep in his heart he knew. They had not come for the city, they had come for the one in his arms. The sky burned with descending lights, beams cutting through the clouds. Strange crafts broke away from the larger ships, smaller but still massive, shaped like blades of glass. They dropped lower and lower, until the air shook with their presence. The sound was like thunder and wind mixed together, rolling over every rooftop. The people scattered, hiding in fear, shouting that the aliens would kill them all. Ethan stayed, rooted to the ground. He wanted to run. Every part of his body screamed to flee, but the alien in his arms groaned, its glowing marks pulsing faintly. And he understood, they were not hunters searching for prey, they were seekers searching for him. Or rather, for the dying figure he carried. The first of the glass-like crafts landed at the edge of the street. Its surface rippled like water as a hatch opened. From inside stepped soldiers unlike anything Ethan had ever imagined. They were tall, armored in plates of dark silver, each carrying weapons that glowed like fire trapped in metal. Their helmets reflected the blue light, hiding their faces, making them look like statues carved from night. The soldiers spread out in silence, scanning the ruined streets, their movements precise, disciplined. One of them raised a device, glowing symbols flashing across it. The device pulsed once, and all the soldiers turned their heads in unison. Their gaze locked on Ethan, the man standing alone in the middle of the street, holding their fallen. Ethan's heart thundered in his chest, his knees weak. The alien in his arms opened its eyes faintly, lips moving to whisper again, "Protector." The soldiers froze at the sound, and then, as one, they dropped to one knee. The ruined street echoed with the sound of metal striking stone. Ethan could not believe his eyes. Soldiers, powerful alien soldiers, bowing, not to him, but to the being he carried. Gasps rose from the humans hiding in the shadows. Whispers spread like fire. Royalty, it must be their royalty. Ethan staggered back, confusion breaking through his fear. He looked down at the alien, whose glowing eyes rested on him with faint recognition. And he realized the truth. The one he had saved with his only blanket was no ordinary wanderer. He was someone important, someone the armies of the stars would kneel to protect. The air trembled again as more crafts descended, more soldiers filling the streets. The entire ruined district was soon surrounded by armored warriors, their weapons held ready, their banners glowing with strange symbols. The sky itself seemed to bow under the weight of their presence. And Ethan, the homeless man no one ever noticed, now stood at the very center of it all. Fear, wonder, disbelief. He felt them all. And yet, above them all, one thought burned in his chest. Everything had changed the moment he had given away his blanket. The soldiers began to chant, their voices like rolling thunder in an alien tongue. The sound carried across the city, shaking windows, echoing through every broken street. And Ethan realized this was no invasion. This was a declaration. The armies had arrived, not to destroy, but to honor the fallen one he had chosen to save. He held the alien tighter as the soldiers surrounded him, their glowing eyes fixed on the fragile figure in his arms. The dawn had come, and with it, the world had shifted forever. The dawn air was filled with the hum of alien engines. Massive ships hung in the sky like silent guardians, their shadows stretching over the ruins of the city. On the streets below, soldiers in silver armor knelt in unison, their heads bowed, their weapons lowered. And at the center of it all stood Ethan, a homeless man clutching a dying alien wrapped in a tattered blanket. The world seemed frozen, every human eye watching, every alien gaze locked upon him. Ethan's knees trembled. He had no strength left, but still he held the fragile body close. He felt as though the weight in his arms was greater than mountains, greater than fate itself. The alien's glowing marks pulsed weakly, matching the beat of Ethan's racing heart. Its lips parted, whispering in a tongue Ethan did not know, then shifting into broken English. Home. Crowned Protector. The soldiers reacted instantly, their heads lifting, their armor glowing as if awakened. A tall figure stepped forward from the largest craft, its armor brighter than the rest, marked with banners of gold and silver. This warrior removed his helmet, revealing a face not unlike the one Ethan carried. Pale blue skin with glowing lines, eyes burning with sharp light. He looked at Ethan with disbelief, then fell to one knee as well, lowering his head. A ripple moved through the ranks, and the soldiers struck their fists to the ground in salute. The humans hiding in alleys gasped in shock, whispers running like fire. Royalty, someone said. He must be their prince. Another voice cried. That man is holding a king's son. The humans had feared invasion, but what they saw now was stranger, more impossible. They saw a forgotten beggar standing at the center of armies, holding the air of another world. Ethan's mouth went dry, the words twisting in his head. Prince, crown, armies, protector. He could not understand how he had fallen into this, how one act of kindness had turned into something greater than himself. But the alien in his arms, the one he had saved, the one who had whispered his name, forced him to believe it. This was no chance, no accident. The tall alien warrior rose and spoke in a deep, commanding voice, his words flowing in their native tongue. The soldiers responded, their chants shaking the streets, banners rising with strange, glowing symbols. Ethan did not understand their words, but he felt the meaning. They were swearing loyalty, swearing vengeance, swearing to follow their prince. And in their eyes, Ethan was no longer invisible. He was no longer a man forgotten by the world. He was the one who had saved their future. The alien prince, weak but still alive, lifted his trembling hand. He pointed not to the sky, not to the armies, but to Ethan. His voice cracked, soft but clear enough for all to hear. Protector, he said. The sound carried across the street like fire, echoed by the voices of the soldiers. They repeated it, shouting the word in unison, Protector. Their chant shook the ruins, making the broken glass tremble. Humans watching from the shadows clutched their ears, unable to believe what they were hearing. Ethan's heart hammered, fear and awe colliding. He tried to speak, to deny it, but no words came. How could he, a man with nothing, be the protector of a prince, the focus of alien armies? Yet when he looked down at the fragile being wrapped in his blanket, when he saw the trust in its fading eyes, he understood. He had not been chosen by blood, not by power, not by destiny written in stars. He had been chosen by compassion, by one small act of kindness in the cold. The tall commander approached Ethan, bowing his head, his voice deep and respectful. In your arms rests Prince Arion, heir to the throne, keeper of our people, he said, his English heavy but clear. You gave life when all others turned away. You gave warmth when the cold tried to take him. Now you are bound to him. Ethan could only stare, words caught in his throat. Prince Arion, protector, armies kneeling, his mind spun like a storm. The prince coughed, his body trembling, but he smiled faintly. His hand rested on Ethan's chest, glowing light seeping into his skin like fire. The soldiers roared as if they had witnessed a sacred oath. The commander lifted his weapon high, shouting in his tongue, and the armies answered with thunder. The ruined city shook with their cry, the humans scattered in terror. And Ethan stood frozen, his life changed beyond recognition. The dawn had broken, and with it the truth had been revealed. The alien he had saved was a prince, and by saving him, Ethan had become something more than human. He was their protector, whether he wanted it or not. The ruined city no longer felt like a forgotten place. The streets that once echoed only with hunger and silence now thundered with the sound of alien boots. Armies stretched across the broken roads, their banners glowing, their weapons alive with strange blue fire. And at the center of all of it stood Ethan, a homeless man who had once been invisible, holding the alien prince he had saved with nothing more than a blanket. Prince Arion rested weakly in his arms, his glowing marks dim yet alive. The alien soldiers moved around Ethan with discipline, forming a circle of protection as if he himself were a treasure. Wherever Ethan stepped, they stepped aside, their heads lowered, their movements sharp. The humans who watched from the ruins could only whisper, their fear mixed with awe. They had known Ethan as nothing. Now they saw him at the center of power beyond their imagination. The tall commander approached again, his silver armor gleaming in the pale morning light. He bowed slightly, something Ethan never thought a soldier would do to him. "You are protector," the commander said in heavy English, his voice low but filled with respect. "You gave the prince life when our enemies tried to take it. You are bound to him until death." Ethan shook his head, confusion flooding his chest. "I'm no protector. I'm nothing." But the prince's trembling hand gripped his shirt, whispering the word again, "Protector," and the armies roared in unison, repeating the title until the air itself shook. The soldiers lifted their weapons high, the banners shimmered with alien fire. Ethan's stomach twisted. He wanted to run. He wanted to wake up from this dream. Yet when he looked at the prince's eyes, faint but steady, he knew this was no dream. This was real, and his life would never be the same again. The commander raised his arm, and a device lit up with a soft pulse. Symbols floated in the air, maps of stars and battle lines Ethan could not understand. He spoke to his soldiers in their native tongue, sharp words filled with command and urgency. The armies answered with chants, their voices deep and thunderous, echoing across the broken city like drums of war. Ethan could not understand the language, but he understood the meaning. They were preparing, they were rallying, not for conquest but for vengeance. One of the soldiers approached Ethan with a container, offering it with lowered head. Inside was food, glowing like strange fruit, and a flask of liquid that shimmered like silver water. Ethan hesitated, then slowly accepted it, his hands trembling. He had not eaten in days, but before he could take a bite, the prince's hand brushed his wrist, guiding it gently. The meaning was clear: share, always share. Ethan lifted the food first to the prince's lips, watching as he swallowed weakly, life flickering stronger in his eyes. Only then did Ethan take a bite, the taste unlike anything he had ever known, filling him with warmth. The humans watching whispered louder now, anger mixing with their fear. "Why him?" they muttered. "Why that beggar?" Some cursed, some prayed, others hid. But no one dared to step closer, not with alien armies filling every street. The commander returned, speaking again. "Enemies will come. They tried to kill the prince. They will try again." He pointed to the sky, where faint trails of light still cut through the clouds, moving like shadows of predators. "We will fight. We will burn the stars if needed. And you, protector, you will stand with us." Ethan's breath caught. The word fight echoed in his mind like thunder. He had never been a soldier. He had never fought for anything but scraps of bread. Yet the armies around him shouted his title, protector, as if it was enough to make him strong. The prince leaned against him, his voice weak but clear enough. "They follow you now, because you followed kindness." Ethan's throat tightened. He wanted to argue, but the truth was already alive in the soldiers' eyes. To them, his act was not small, it was sacred. He had given when he had nothing, and in their eyes, that made him worthy of their loyalty. The streets shook again as more ships descended, larger, heavier, their presence making the air burn. The commander's voice rose above the roar, speaking to his soldiers, their chants rising like fire. Ethan stood in the middle of it all, holding the prince tighter, feeling the weight of thousands of warriors who now looked to him as a symbol. He did not understand their language, he did not understand their weapons, but he understood one thing. This was no longer about survival, this was about war. And somehow, impossibly, the war had chosen him. The morning sun broke fully over the city, painting the ruins in pale gold. What once had been a forgotten corner of Earth now glowed under the shadows of alien ships. The skies shimmered with banners of light. The streets thundered with chants of alien soldiers. And in the center of it all stood Ethan, the man who had once been nothing, holding the prince he had saved with his only blanket. Prince Arion's breathing grew stronger with each passing moment, healed slowly by alien medicine. But even as he regained strength, his glowing eyes never left Ethan. The soldiers knelt again, chanting words Ethan could not understand, but their meaning struck deep. They were not chanting for their ships, not chanting for their commanders. They were chanting for him. Protector. The tall commander raised his hand, and the noise fell silent. He looked to Ethan, his face calm, but his voice carrying the weight of thunder. The armies will move. The enemies who tried to take the prince will pay. But first, the protector must be named. Ethan's stomach twisted. He wanted to run, to vanish, to hide in the shadows where he had always belonged. But the prince reached out, his weak fingers gripping Ethan's arm with surprising strength. The prince's voice, though faint, carried across the ruined street. This man gave when he had nothing. He shared warmth when the cold tried to kill. He gave life to a stranger. He turned his glowing eyes to the armies, his voice breaking but strong with meaning. This man is no beggar, no forgotten shadow. He is protector, the one chosen by kindness, the one who binds us to honor. The soldiers slammed their weapons against the ground, the sound rolling like thunder through the city. They raised their banners, voices rising in unison, repeating the word until the air itself shook. Protector, protector, protector. Ethan's chest tightened, his mind spun. He wanted to shout that he was no leader, that he was only a man with a blanket. But the truth could not be denied. The armies did not see weakness when they looked at him. They saw strength. They saw loyalty. They saw hope. The commander knelt, lowering his weapon, his head bowed to Ethan. Protector, the prince has named you. We follow you now. We fight beside you. The words struck Ethan like lightning, his throat dry, his knees weak. He looked around, thousands of alien soldiers standing ready, their eyes glowing with fire, their chants shaking the ruins. For the first time in his life, people were not looking past him. They were looking at him, waiting, trusting. Ethan lifted his head, his voice rough but steady. I never asked for this, he whispered. I never wanted armies. I never wanted war. But if you believe in me, then I will stand. The prince smiled faintly, his hand still clutching Ethan's arm, whispering once more, Protector. And with that single word, the armies erupted, raising their weapons, shouting until the sky itself seemed to bow. The humans hiding in the alleys could not believe their eyes. The man they had once mocked, the man they had called mad for helping an alien, now stood as the chosen of another world. Some fell to their knees, some wept, others fled. But all knew they were witnessing the birth of something greater than themselves. The alien ships opened above, their glowing hulls spreading banners of light across the sky. The soldiers formed ranks, their steps shaking the ground, their chants rolling like storms. The commander raised his weapon, pointing to the horizon. War comes, he said. But we will not fall, for we follow the protector. The soldiers roared, their voices echoing like the cry of 1,000 storms. Ethan looked at the sky, his blanket still wrapped around the prince, the same blanket that had begun all of this. He thought of the night before, when he had been nothing but cold and hungry, invisible to the world. He thought of how he had chosen kindness, not knowing it would change everything. And now, because of that single act, alien armies marched, banners rose, and the stars themselves seemed to turn toward him. The prince leaned against him, whispering softly, One blanket saved a kingdom. Ethan closed his eyes for a moment, his chest heavy with the weight of destiny. When he opened them again, he saw not fear, but purpose. He was protector now, not by choice, but by truth. And as the armies began their march, the ruined city trembling under their steps, Ethan walked with them, no longer invisible, no longer forgotten. The story of one man and one blanket would echo far beyond the streets of Earth. It would be carried into the stars, written into the history of worlds. Because sometimes, the smallest kindness is the spark that changes everything. And Ethan, the man who once had nothing, now carried the future of a prince, the loyalty of armies, and the name Protector.